Hello and welcome to Tech Funnels interview series. My name is Sukanya Ahuja, and today we have the opportunity to talk to Shahar from Stoke Talent. He is the CEO and he has over 15 years of experience in various management positions in a wide range of organizations, building stellar teams and leading them to success. Welcome, Shahar. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me here.
So let's start with a little bit about what you do at Stoke.
So I'm the CEO, as you mentioned, at Stoke. At Stoke, we deliver a platform that enables organizations to tap into the freelance economy. So we actually create a bridge between this growing movement towards freelancers, flexible workforce, and empowering corporates with the ability to tap into that workforce, hire freelancers at scale, and make sure they're properly managed and activated.
All right. So as the economy has taken a major shift with the COVID levels, so how has the freelance employment become more acceptable? And do you think that this trend will continue post the pre-COVID, like when we reach pre-COVID normalcy again?
So, the move towards freelance and flexible workforce was here before COVID. It's been going on for 20 years now. The trend has been very, very clear. Freelancers are now growing 3 times faster compared to traditional employment arrangement in the US, EU, and other parts of the world as well. And all indicators were for freelancers to make 50% of the workforce in the US by 2025 and 60% by 2030. And COVID has accelerated it. We all see the indicators. So is it going to keep accelerating in the same pace post-COVID? I think the jury is still out on that. I think a few things that happened during COVID that I think will remain. People have realized during COVID that there is no such thing as job security anymore. Because if you look at the last 20 years, there's been 3 significant economic crises. You have 2000, 2008, and now COVID has created, some sort of crisis. And people realize that sticking around to the same job for a long period of time doesn't necessarily guarantee any sense of security. And if you think about it, already, by the way, the average lifetime for a freelancer in tech companies has dropped from an average of 4 years to below 2 years. So people have started shifting jobs very, very quickly. What we've seen during COVID is that freelancers and contractors were actually the first to be let go, to be fired, if you will. They're not officially fired because they're not employees, but they were let go. But they were the first to find their next job because they invest their time in building the network, upping their skills. They have multiple employers, and so they knew how to find the next job pretty quickly. On the other end, full-time employees that were let go were like deer staring at the headlights, because all of a sudden it's like, I haven't been interviewing for 5 years. I don't have the network. I'm not sure what people are asking anymore. And so it took them a lot longer. And so and I think now it's the first time in job history where this is so publicly spoken of, and it's so acceptable to be a freelancer. I'm 45 years old. When I was getting into the job market, freelancers were people that couldn't get a steady job. Now being a freelancer is very acceptable and very popular. And so I don't think we're going to see this trend stopping post-COVID. I think it's going to continue. I think the trajectory is pretty clear. I guess more of the question is, are we going to hit 60% by 2030 or 55% by 2030? It doesn't really matter. It's still a pretty significant number.
So as you're trying to say that the acceleration is still going to be the same after the post-COVID levels, or do you think it might die down a little once normalcy is reached and once everything opens up? Do you think the pace will continue?
I think the pace we've seen during COVID will decelerate. I think we're going to see the same pace of pre-COVID, maybe a little faster. And so it's not going to be as fast as COVID, but I think we're going to still see that pace.
Okay. So as you mentioned that all of these freelance employees, they are very, very proactive in terms of upskilling themselves, creating a network, whereas permanent employees might not. But apart from being up to date, what are the benefits that can be offered to somebody who is working as a freelance gigger? person? Like,
So I really think there's really a set of things. It's not a one thing.
yeah.
Number one, I think that assuming control of your own career, right? And so you're not putting yourself into a job and kind of hope you're going to climb up the corporate ladder. You hope you're going to get a raise. You hope it's like you're taking control of your career. Number two is flexibility. I can have one employer, I can have multiple employers. I can take small gigs. I can take large engagement. I can travel the world and be a digital nomad. So I now assume full control of my destiny, if you will. And then there's also, how should I say that? The self-focus on being up to date with trends. And so when I'm a freelancer, I realize that my value comes from the fact that I'm up to date, I'm quick to deliver results. And so it helps me keep me on my toes, if you will. And so I'm usually I'll be better at what I do. And most researchers will show that freelancers are quicker to provide value, are more up to date on skills and so forth. And I think one of the major benefits of being a freelancer today is that I get my true market value. So if I'm great at what I'm doing, I can charge more, right? I'm great at what I do. I'm in high demand. I'll ask for more. I work hard in preparing myself and training, and I want to charge whatever it is, depending on the profession. When you're in corporate, there's pay bands and structures. You can't come one day and say, hey, I want 2x. If you're a freelancer, you're great at what you do, and someone's willing to pay, it's a negotiation. Go get it. And so I think that has led to what we're seeing in the last, say, 5 years trend, where the top 20% in any category, whether it's graphic design or content writing or software engineering, data science, I mean, you can pick your pick. These people go to one of three options. They go start a startup company if they have an idea and then the funding. They join a company, a large corporate, like a Facebook, Google, Amazon, where they get paid a lot of money but don't really have to work, or work hard, if you will. Or they go become freelancers and turn themselves into single person company. And just from an income perspective, flexibility perspective, and forward-looking opportunities, they become much more valuable.
Okay. That's a lot of great benefits I see to being a freelancer. So from shifting to an employee's perspective, now let's talk a little bit from a corporate's perspective. Being a company and as team leaders, can it be a little harder for companies to manage freelance workers because they can be a little more erratic? And can technology provide any aid for this?
So the short answer is yes. That's part of what we do at Stoke. So I think that the shift that we've seen, by the way, right now there's multi-hundred millions of people engaged in the freelance economy worldwide. There is about 800 marketplaces for freelancers around the world. We know the large ones and the public ones, but there's about 800 general marketplaces. All these marketplaces combined make less than 1% of the freelance economy in the US. And the reason is, to your point, because corporates can still not leverage that change in the market, and they cannot because it's very complicated for companies to tap into this freelance economy. So where do we find the freelancers? How do we onboard them? How do we ensure they're compliant? How do we ensure they get paid on time? How do we make payments in, in multi-currency? How do we make sure tax forms are filed correctly? It's like, how do we make sure data is not breached? Like, there's a lot of different things. And over time, organizations have not prepared the backbone to deal with this flexible workforce. There's usually three things that are required to deal with change. It's people, process, and tools. And so there's a shift in people. Workforce is changing. Again, the youngest millennials are already sitting in our C-levels in management teams, and so this shift is happening. Gen Z is making itself into the workforce, and so they're thinking differently about how to build a workforce and what does it mean to have people working with you and for you. There are no processes in these organizations just yet on how to manage freelancers, and so that's required. And then when there's a process, you need a tool to actually execute on that strategy. To that point, Deloitte has their annual Human Capital Trend Report. Their 2019 report called out that only 8% of companies have a valid process in place to manage what they call alternative workforce. And because they don't have the product, it's kind of, it's kind of stuck in this limbo. Where technology can help is technology enables the process in the organization. It's like, okay, if we want to work with freelancers, we need to make sure they're properly onboarded, they're signing a legal doc, they get paid on time, people can actually work with them, approve payments and so forth. And once the process is there, it empowers the managers to then be more agile and flexible in how they think about, hey, we need to solve a problem. Do we wait 6 to 9 months until we hire a team, or do we go build a freelance project team within a few weeks? And so I think definitely technology provides the assurance for the company around compliance, payments, taxation, process, blah, blah, blah. So the rest of the organization can stop tapping into this economy.
Right. So as you mentioned that it's through the Deloitte report that there's only 8% of the bigger corporates who have a system in place. So what kind of acceleration in terms of expansion of these technology deployments do you see in the near future?
Well, obviously, I think that there's been kind of almost a perfect storm for the last 24 months. On the one end, it started off with a significant skills gap. People needed resources. People now need even more resources. Again, everyone's raising obscene amounts of cash and they need to move faster, so they need talent. And on the other end, this understanding that contractors need to be treated differently by the organization from a compliance perspective has never been this publicly spoken of. So in the United States, it's been started with AB5 and Prop 22. The UK legislated IR35. And so companies are kind of saying, well, there's two ways. Either we say no to contractors, and then we're kind of blocking out whatever percent of workforce. And by the way, even companies that have done that, managers are kind of going in the shadows and hiring freelancers, or they're saying, okay, we understand this is a need. We need a technology in place. We need a process in place to make that happen. And so I think what we're seeing is the growth of the marketplaces as we've seen in public markets. And now we're seeing this growth in tools where we're playing around, okay, we need to properly manage our own independent contractors for compliance. And we need a tool to help us build what we call a talent cloud, where I can manage my own set of freelancers that we already work with and other industry in the organization can work with. What we're seeing now that most companies are managing contractors in a spreadsheet and kind of moving it, word of mouth. It's like, hey, this guy's great, this gal is awesome. And it's not scalable. You need a system in place. And it's probably the same trend that we've seen, I don't know, last 15 years, where companies moved from managing headcount and employees in a spreadsheet to managing them in HiBob or Workday or Bamboo or one of these systems, because kind of, okay, we need that. And then there's applicant tracking systems that have grown in the last decade as well. Now the world is shifting towards independent contractors. These systems are not suited for these environments, and they're not compliant because you're not supposed to manage employees and contractors in the same environment. And so we're going to see the rise of the new sets of solutions to manage contractors.
So as you mentioned right now that it's not compliant. So how is Stoke Talent helping companies to leverage the gig economy while still staying compliant with the various labor laws that are in place?
So first of all, as a solution, we are the place where all contractors are housed. So to begin with, you have one place to see all the contractors. And one of the things we're seeing, by the way, to your question is every company we talk to, if you talk to the CFO, CEO, or VP HR or VP people, they all know exactly how many employees work in the company, right? It's like 432, 575. It's like everybody knows the number. You won't find a single person in the organization that knows how many independent contractors there are. And we're seeing the gaps of up to 3 to 5x. It's not, they're not semi-wrong. They have no idea. And if you don't know how many you have, you can be sure that they're well managed. You can be sure they're signing contracts. By the way, we're seeing it. Contracts are not signed, taxes not submitted. And so what Stoke does, first of all, is just everything in one place. And then we can track, are all legal documents signed or not? We are the ones making sure that legal documents are signed. Our tax forms collected and up to date. Our payments going out on the right time. Was background check ran? is offboarding done properly? One of the feedback we got from a lot of our customers was, you're bringing in freelancers, they work with you for 6 weeks or 3 months, whatever it is. You're done with the project. What happens then? There is no offboarding process. There's an offboarding process for employees, but there's no offboarding for freelancers. And so we spoke to a few companies that went public. And when they went public, they went through an audit, obviously. And then, someone scanned the system and found that there are freelancers with system access 8 or 9 months after they're done with the project, because there was no offboarding process. And so how do you automate the offboarding process? Like, there's just a set of things. And once that happens and the organization has that system, then what I call the office of the CFO, which is finance, legal, probably HR, have the confidence to give the managers in the organization the autonomy to just go and start working with freelancers, because they know everything in the back office will be done properly. And so what Stoke does is really give them that peace of mind and simplicity around managing freelancers. To the hiring managers, we give a solution to keep very healthy relationship with those freelancers. One of the things I personally ran into when I ran a team of freelancers in one of my previous jobs was, all of a sudden you get an email from a freelancer saying, "Hey, what's going on? I haven't been paid for like 3 months." And then you as a hiring, I didn't even know, because it's like, finance is taking care of payments, but I had no visibility. So apparently finance was busy. He sent email, no one noticed, or someone ignored, whatever the reason was. And then you start getting into this embarrassing situation, and you want to keep your best freelancers happy. On the other hand, I had freelancers that got paid more than I planned because I didn't track budget correctly. And so I want, as a manager, to know, who are my freelancers, how much they got paid. I want to make sure they get paid on time. I want to make sure no one's taking a carve out out of how much money these guys get. So Stoke doesn't charge a dime from the freelancers. We take a platform fee from the corporate. The freelancers get 100% of their pay. Most of the marketplaces that work with freelancers take, 10 to 20, 25% cut. And so the best freelancers will not want to work under those circumstances.
All right. So basically what I'm understanding, it's a very nice and sophisticated solution to a very, very big need gap. So that's a big fill in the industry. Kudos to that.
That's what we're counting on.
So can you tell me a little more about the acts that you mentioned, like the AB5 and the PRO Act?
Yeah, sure. So again, not to get into too much into legal stuff, so stop me if I exaggerate, but back in 2018, the governor in California, I'll add a few, some gossip spice there, got into apparently a dispute with Uber around how Uber classifies their drivers. And one thing led to another, and there was a legislation called AB5 that really means that, how do you make sure that someone that's doing work for you is classified as an independent contractor and shouldn't be classified as an employee? There's a reason why. Specifically in the US, every country has a bit of a different meaning. So what I'm talking about right now is specifically in California, not just the US. But generally speaking, in the US, if you're a contractor, then the company doesn't pay taxes for you, and you work your own taxes with the state. The state prefers employees because they get the tax immediately every month and not at the end of the year. And so the state has a reason why they want people classified as employees. But there's more to it, to be completely honest, in that when someone is an independent contractor, they don't get social benefits, they don't get health insurance. And so you get into this environment where low income freelancers or contractors are kind of left on the sideline with, and might become burden on society. And so there was legislation that kind of said, well, anybody that doesn't fit what they call the ABC test will be defined as an employee. And that's, are they doing something that's main business for the company? How long have they been working for the company? And is there anybody else in the company that's doing similar business, something along that line? And that kind of made and let me know if I'm going overboard, by the way. And that kind of made the state court in California kind of decide, well, all Uber drivers in California need to be defined as employees because they don't meet the ABC. The problem was with AB5, the way it was legislated was a very wide stroke to all independent contractors. It wasn't made for Uber. And so that created a significant chaos, because if you're a content writer, if you're a software engineer, it's like everybody now went into this bucket of what does AB5 really mean. And that started creating this, exemptions. Okay, AB5 holds, but not for journalists. Doesn't hold for designers. It's like it started having these cracks. In August of last year, again, the court kind of set a date for Uber to turn all their drivers into employees. But we're kind of said, if that situation, we're actually going to go out of California. We can't turn them into employees. And actually, Uber, Lyft, and Instacart, I believe, have spent about $200 million on a campaign to get the citizens of California to vote on whether Uber drivers can be defined as contractors. That was called Prop 22, and it passed, and now Prop 22 is in effect. And what Prop 22 meant, without getting into too much detail, was you can still be an independent contractor, but if you're working for a company as a contractor for more than, I think there's like a 15-hour bracket and a 25-hour bracket a week, then you will get, social benefit, you will get health insurance. You can be a contractor, but there's going to be a little more of consequences. I think, I'm taking a step back around all these legislations. I think what the legislators are trying to do is noble, but it's done incorrectly. They're trying to defend people not from being abused, if you will, or taken advantage of. And obviously, people with low income throughout history around the world have been taken advantage of. And so I understand the need to support them. The challenge is, around the world today, an independent contractor is defined as an independent contractor. And unlike an employee, if I'm an employee in most world countries, there's like tax brackets. If I make X, I'll pay this. If I make X plus, I'll make that. For contracts, it's like you're either a contractor or not a contractor. And within this contracting business, there's a lot of gray area. There's low income, $7 an hour, $10 an hour Uber driver. And there is a $400 an not scientist coming out of MIT. Putting them both in the same bucket is probably not taking things in the right direction. And I think what's missing there to complete this legislation is two things. Number one is comparing the actual income to the median income in that state. So if you're making enough, whatever enough can be defined, then it's okay, you can choose to be a contractor. And if you have bargaining power. So if I negotiated a personal contract, and I'm not one of 50,000 Uber drivers, I'm actually negotiating my own contract, these two should come into effect. I don't think all these legislations will be able to change where the market's heading. The winds of change are coming, the market's changing, the world is changing, and we need to make sure that legislation is fitting that. And I'm sorry, I went on like a 5-minute speech there.
No, but definitely very insightful. But as you mentioned, that there's a lot of gray area within these entire legislations. So how can company leaders lobby and encourage state and local governments to protect the freelancers and gig workers?
I think part of it is what I just described, right? I think that we're seeing, definitely in a challenging economy and as the world is changing, I think that state legislators and business leaders should vote to the fact that this is how people choose to work today. And we should empower that. The survey ran in 2018 in the US had 45% of high school students, Gen Z, saying they will not take a traditional job. They want flexible employment. That's how they see their future. And so instead of fighting it, how do you empower that? How do you make it work, but work while still providing some sort of social safety net to low income individuals? And so I think obviously, business leaders with their lobbyists can influence the markets. I think it's very similar to what we've seen, unfortunately, during the Trump administration around immigration, where they stopped immigration, and then the business leaders kind of say, immigrants, I was an immigrant in the US for a while, immigrants are the ones that are driving innovation, change, growth in the US. Like, we're hurting ourselves by stopping it. The same thing here. you're going to kill, sorry for the drama, if you're going to kill contracting in the US, US companies are going to go to contractors outside the US, right? It's not disappearing. Flexible workforce is a necessity. And I think the legislator needs to empower that, but with the right guardrails.
Makes a lot of sense. I would say from everything we've talked about, I feel like the next few years, it's going to be a bigger shift to the entire freelance economy. Because
let's schedule a follow-up in 12 months and see if we were right.
Most definitely. But this was really insightful today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Let's keep in touch. And thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.